Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to talk about the brand new, premium, Tier 6, Pan-European destroyer, Öland. Or Oland? Öland, maybe? I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced. There is, after all, an accent over the O, and I'm not sure what that accent causes the letter O to sound like. Maybe somebody can let me know in the comments section. But enough about the name of the ship. How does it play? That's the question here. And, well, I'd start off by saying that the Öland is quite unlike any other Tier 6 destroyer currently in the game. I don't know if it's anything like the Tech Tree Pan-European destroyer, because I wasn't lucky enough to pull that one out of crate, but I think the most apt comparison you could make would require you to go up to Tier 7 and take a look at the premium Tier 7 Pan-European destroyer Friesland. Like the Friesland, the Öland has a very similar gun setup. It's only got 4 guns set in 2 triple turrets, one on the front of the ship and one on the back. Like the Friesland, that back turret has a 360-degree rotation, although the turret traverse speed is quite a bit slower. It's got a speed of 18 seconds to do a 180-degree turn, so the guns can take a little bit of time to actually get on target, but that 360-degree rotation is nice. Also, like the Friesland, these guns reload very, very quickly, just around 2 seconds. I think it's a little bit slower than the Friesland's base reload, but they fire very quickly indeed, and they have a base 7% fire chance, which means they're actually quite efficient at starting fires. Although the alpha strike is low, it's only 1700. So that means I think the Öland, at least in my experience, feels like it can get outgunned by some other dedicated gunboat destroyers with fast reloads around the 3 or 5 second range, but higher alpha strike. Nevertheless, it is capable of melting enemy destroyers with its quick, rapid rate of fire. You just do need to be careful because the Öland is also a very slow destroyer, kind of like the Friesland, but even slower. In fact, I think it struggles to maintain a speed of even 30 knots when you're going at full speed and maneuvering and turning. The rudder shift is pretty good, pretty responsive, but the turning circle feels massive. It takes forever, it feels like, for this ship to completely change directions. Now, it does have the engine boost consumable, which is nice, so you can increase that speed, and you can get this destroyer going at around 40 knots, I think, at full tilt with the engine boost in effect. Now, unlike the Friesland, the Öland actually carries torpedoes, but only 6 of them, set in 2 triple launchers. These torpedoes have a base 12-kilometer range, which is quite long, and they have a base speed of 76 knots, which is exceptionally fast. Now, nobody's really going to care about the base speed, though, because I think all of the Pan-European destroyer commanders have that torpedo speed skill that adds on an extra 4 knots. I'm running that skill on this build, and that brings the torpedo speed up to 80 knots, making them lightning fast. Plus, I've stacked Space Fishy as an inspiration on top of that, and I've got the torpedoes topping out at 83 knots, which means if a ship is sailing in their path and doesn't take any maneuvers to avoid them, then as soon as they see the torpedoes, they really don't have a lot of time left to dodge. Plus, you can launch these torpedoes in what I assume, or would like to call, the super narrow spread. You can see just how tightly grouped these torpedoes are, and that makes them more precise when hitting targets. In fact, half of the 6 torpedoes that I launch here are actually going to make contact with this Bismarck's hull, and I think you're going to notice that they're pretty efficient at starting floods, although the alpha strike is low, somewhere in the 10 to 11 kilometer range. So in effect, when they hit, they're going to be doing an average around, probably 7, 8, maybe 9k damage when you take torpedo damage reduction into account. So not exactly impressive, not winning any awards, but they are super fast, the spread is narrow, the range is long, and they have a base reload time of 70 seconds, which I've cut down to just under 60 seconds. I think 59 seconds using the new Pan-European destroyer commander, the Stig. So, very quick torpedoes, very quick reloading torpedoes, and very quick guns. No smoke screen, though, and it is a rather clumsy and slow destroyer. It does have the repair party consumable, 2 charges of it, and that repair party consumable can replenish, I think, roughly over 1,000 hit points. So if you do lose some, you can get them back. You see there we were reduced to about 6,000 hit points, and now we're up to nearly 8,000. So a little bit more. Actually, we're above 8,000 now, so a little bit more than 2,000 hit points per repair party, assuming that the damage you take is repairable damage. So that's nice. It certainly increases the survivability prospects. Nevertheless, I don't think this is a very easy destroyer to play. It does require you to line up your torpedo salvos well and to position yourself in places where you can get torpedo strikes. And then when you do, you can't expect the damage to be winning any awards. You can, however, expect these torpedoes to cause a lot of floods, and you can expect the guns to light a lot of fires. So there are good opportunities for stacking dots as a way to make up for the low alpha of the torpedoes and the low alpha of the guns. This thing can certainly deal damage. It just needs to be careful about doing it because its options to disengage are fairly limited due to the lack of a smoke screen and the rather pedestrian top speed. Nevertheless, I think some people are going to find this destroyer to be very underwhelming. Some people are probably going to say it's bad. I don't think I'm one of those people. I haven't been able to get any super high damage games with it, but I have won most of the games I've played in it, and I've played 15 to 20 games thus far. Like I said, not high damage games, but effective games. This ship is very good at winning games, especially if it has to counter other destroyers that it can comfortably outgun, and if it can get a couple good torpedoes hits in on some battleships or some cruisers, it can cause a lot of havoc. But again, it is not as impressive as other destroyers at Tier 6 in terms of pumping out damage, but it's a consistent destroyer, and consistency is, at least in my opinion, a value in destroyers. So, I like the ship. I think it can be quite effective indeed, and I don't think there are many things that play just like it. Here, though, by the way, as we launch these torpedoes, notice that that is the widespread. And really, if you compare that to other destroyers of other nations' tech trees or other premium destroyers, that widespread is probably equivalent to the average narrow spread. So you see what I mean about the other option for the torpedoes with the super narrow spread. Unfortunately, those torpedoes do not hit this Ognivoy, and I think this Ognivoy is actually being played by a super tester. I recognize the name. He's caught out, though. He's pushed in too far, and you can see that, these guns, while they don't do a lot of damage with each individual shell, the damage does add up very quickly, and we are able to remove a lot of hit points with the Ognivoy. And plus, with his position, he was just, we were able to benefit from assistance via our teammates, which is always nice when your teammates shoot at the enemy destroyers. And that right there, I think, pretty much seals the deal. This game is going to be a loss for the enemy. All that's really left to do is maybe farm some damage, which we're going to try to do a little bit with the guns versus the King George, or rather the Duke of York here. And we're going to be looking for that last enemy destroyer as well as the aircraft carrier. In any case, who should buy this destroyer? I don't think that this is going to be an easy destroyer to play if you are not a destroyer player. The limited number of torpedoes, the low alpha strike on the torpedoes, the lack of the smoke screen, all those things, I think that all adds up to make the Öland a fairly challenging experience for destroyer players. And if you are used to relying on your torpedoes for big knockout alpha strike punches, these torpedoes are not going to give you the same thing at all. You're probably going to struggle until you get the hang of playing this ship to deal a whole lot of damage. And even when you do get the hang of it, it can be difficult to rack up big damage numbers. So if you're after big damage numbers, this is probably not the ship that's going to allow you to get them very easily. But if you're concerned about winning games and being competitive, then this ship is actually, I think, a fairly good choice for that due to its rapid rate of fire, its very quick torpedoes with very long range, and also its repair party consumable. There's one more consumable that we haven't yet talked about, and that is the defensive anti-aircraft consumable. I think the AA on this ship is pretty good, even without that consumable, and with it, it seems like the anti-aircraft firepower is quite effective against at least Tier 5 carriers. Against Tier 7, maybe not. They are a little bit more immune to the damage that the AA guns can point out, but they can still lose, a fair number of planes coming in for a strike. We've already shot down 4 planes from this Parseval. He's coming in for another strike. We've used both of our defensive AA consumables. We'll see if we get any more planes shot down here. I don't know. Like I said, though, against Tier 5, very good AA. Against Tier 7, maybe not so great. But on the bright side, you don't really see Tier 7 carriers in every game the way you do see carriers these days, it seems like, at the lower tiers, Tiers 3 and Tier 5. There seem to be a lot of carriers on the seas down there. In any case, all that's left to do is farm out this Ognivoy Parseval, and give you my final thoughts on the ship. Again, I wouldn't recommend it if you're after a ship that is very, very good at pumping out crap tons of damage. This one's not it, and it is, I think, a fairly challenging experience for people who are not well-versed in destroyers. But if you're in any way interested in the pan-European destroyers, then I think this gives us a good taste. I imagine the higher-tier pan-European destroyers, like the Ostergotland, maybe the Holland, if it ever comes to the legendary tier. This is sort of going to be a down-tiered experience of those. At least that's what I suspect. So, I like the ship. I don't think it's the best ship ever to be released, but I don't think it's a bad premium either. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.